Welcome to the Stormsurf video surf forecast for the week starting Sunday, August 20th. Looking at significant wave heights for the South Pacific Ocean, we don't see a whole lot going on. Cutoff low is in the far southeast Pacific, but all fetch and seas associated with it are pushing southeast away from our forecast area. Also, remnants of a gale, previously barely in the Southern California swell window, is moving well to the east and out of the picture. And in between, it looks apparent that the whole momentum of the South Pacific Ocean is moving towards Antarctica and not towards the northeast. Let's get into the details. As usual, we'll start our tour looking at jet stream level winds. These winds up about 30,000 feet help support the formation of gales, and when they do form, help direct their track. We're looking for a trough, that is a push in the jet to the north, just like this right here. That helps create low pressure in the upper atmosphere. In this case, low pressure in the southern hemisphere circulates clockwise. Of course, that also manifests itself down at the surface in the form of low pressure or maybe a gale, and that in turn creates wind. Wind creates seas. Seas, as they radiate away from the fetch area, preferably to the north, creates swell, and swell, when it impacts your beach, creates surf. So we do have a little bit of a trough here, barely, almost not really in the Southern California swell window. That cuts off, let's say, around 117. But yeah, for argument's sake, we'll say the trough is in the Southern California swell window with 120 knot winds pushing to the north. But quickly, you can see as we get into Monday, that trough disappears. Something almost looks like another trough is trying to organize behind that on Monday, but is pretty much more in the swell window relative to Peru and Chile. We'll roll this out. And so also remember, the ice line is down around 65, maybe even a bit north of that. So any gale that forms south of there is over ice, gets no traction on ice-free waters, and therefore no swell potential is possible. Anyway, we just sort of watch this roll out. We're into Friday. Big ridge starts pushing southwest starts pushing southeast over the southwest Pacific. The rest of the jet is south of the ice line, the southern branch. That's the one that matters. Northern branch, we see here, is at about 27 south, but we have this split jet stream flow just like we have most of the summer, and in between the split jet is typically high pressure like here and here and here, and that does nothing for storm production. Roll this out. Again, very split flow as we get into Sunday, a week out, and let's see, we're right there. No change. So basically, there's no clear support for gale development over the greater South Pacific from the jet stream. Let's go take a look down at the surface. Here we are, surface level pressure, surface level winds. There's high pressure locking things down over the Central Pacific. Here is, just as we expected, a little bit of a gale here. But again, the cutoff is over here. All the fetch is, and minimal fetch, 35. Little patch of 40 knot fetch there. Really, you need 40 knot winds to generate enough period to get a swell going to make it the whole way up into the California swell window. But this is good relative to Chile and Peru. They'll get some surf out of that for sure. Anyway, we roll on out into Monday and Tuesday. Look at that, south winds pushing, or north winds pushing to the south, and no other fetch of any real interest. Here's a little gale that just popped up here. What is that? 45 knot winds in the swell window. Let's just take a look though, but check this out. So here it is. It looks to be falling southeast, and it is. And really what you need is it to push to the northeast. When it falls southeast, most of the swell gets pushed off to the east or to the southeast and does not make it into our forecast area. Anyway, we'll move along here looking for any signs. Here's a little area of 35 knot winds supposedly on Friday, but that's maybe good for Tahiti, but nothing relative to California or Hawaii. Continue looking for signs of anything. Of course, it is getting pretty late in the season, and basically nothing is showing up. Let's go take a look at the wave model. Here we go, significant wave height, South Pacific Ocean. We'll roll this out. We're looking for anything starting somewhere around in here into about 110 west in this area with 30-foot seas or greater. And there is that one little fetch we saw. And it got just a little bit of 30-foot seas projected on Tuesday, but falling southeast. So that one's out of the picture. Just continue looking for anything. Just not really seeing it. 20-foot seas, that's not enough. That will completely dissipate before it reaches California or Hawaii. And here we are a week out and nothing. So, not looking so good for the southern hemisphere. Let's go take a look up to the north. We'll just do this real quick. We're going to start at the jet stream. So we do have a little bit more of a cohesive jet as compared to last week. There is some energy at least flowing in between the 40 and the 45 north latitude line, but very weak. Winds are kind of not doing a whole lot. And then if anything, it moves further north as we get into midweek over the Aleutian Islands. A little bit of a trough trying to dig itself out here Wednesday, and then that dissipates real quick. Then a little bit more energy. This is the first sign of some decent energy over north of Japan, the Kuril Islands. Let's see if it makes any headway into the greater North Pacific. And not really. It's pretty much tracking over the Aleutian Islands as we get into Sunday. And just not a whole lot yet. But as you can see, little bit at a time, the North Pacific jet stream is trying to get more energy in it. This is pretty typical of this time of year, suggesting a change of focus from the southern hemi to the northern hemisphere. Fall is not here yet, of course, but slowly energy is building in the North Pacific. Here we go, North Pacific surface level pressure and winds, and not a whole lot going on. We do see a tropical system, Hurricane Kenneth here, off southwest of Baja. A bit of winds, and it's actually building stronger than expected. We'll get into that in a minute, but just sort of scouring the rest of the ocean, we see a high pressure here, 1028 millibars, generating a pressure gradient here off of North California, generating 25, almost 30 knot winds. That's producing wind swell along the North and Central California coast. Also notice there is a bit of a gradient off the south side of this high as well, generating 15 knot winds aimed at Hawaii, but probably not quite enough just yet to produce wind swell. We get into Monday. The gradient starts fading off of California. Kenneth starts moving more towards Hawaii, sort of speaking. The gradient is gone by Tuesday morning, but notice fetch the gradient relative to Hawaii, high pressure building here, starts building a little bit more relative to the Hawaiian Islands. This is only 15 knot winds, but that's enough to generate wind swell along east facing shores. Also notice pattern of low pressure moving over the Aleutians into the Gulf. Not enough wind. I mean, you really need 25 or 30 knot winds to get some swell out of it. Wind swell continues relative to Hawaii into Thursday and into Friday as well. Kenneth dissipating. The gradient fires up big time off of California again. Look at this 20, 25, almost 30 knot winds covering all of North and Central California. And let's see how it goes. Into Saturday, it starts weakening, pushing off to the north. Kenneth, just a fish storm at this point, not doing anything. Probably only a depression at that point Saturday. And wind swell is the most likely source of energy for California. Same for Hawaii, and even that fades out relative to Hawaii by late in the weekend. And there we go. We're at 180 hours out, moving into Monday, and even wind swell starts fading relative to California. So for the most part, a benign pattern. Let's go take a look at the tropics real quick. Here we go. Here's the specs on Kenneth as of 18Z. That's about 11 a.m. on Sunday. 80 knot winds down here. Hawaii's well off where, in fact, let's see if we can drag this up. You can't see it, but that's 130 west. That's 125 west. So that would be about 1,800 nautical miles away from Hawaii. Probably not any swell going to result from that directly. And the track is off to the northwest, peaking tonight into tomorrow morning up to 95 knot winds, and then quickly supposed to fade while tracking off to the northwest. So no direct swell likely for Hawaii. But again, we said high pressure is up in here. That will create a pressure gradient. Remember, winds flow counterclockwise around low pressure, and tropical systems are a form of low pressure, a rather extreme form of low pressure, and high pressure circulates clockwise. The integration of those two creates a gradient and more winds in the north side of these tropical systems, and that will be aimed at Hawaii and move in close proximity to the Hawaii Islands, which could result in some rideable short period wind swell. And here's a quick look at the satellite image. When you see an eye exposed like that, when you can clearly see an eye, that means typically minimum 90 knot winds, and we're quickly approaching that. Very small system, Kenneth is, but still pretty well formed. looking good for the moment. Unfortunately, not expected to, it's out in the middle of the ocean, not moving close to land. That's good, I guess. But in terms of swell generation, you want it to be a little bit closer to somewhere so somebody can get some surf out of it. So the immediate future is not particularly promising unless wind swell is your thing. Then California should do okay, Hawaii should do okay, but there is no significant southern hemi swell in the water. That said, just to cover our bases, there was a gale. This was Saturday, the 06 that's really Friday night. 24-foot seas in the Southern California swell windows right there. So, yeah, maybe, and watch this, this gale build up on Saturday up to 32-foot seas, but way over at 100 west. That still means, and notice there's also a little fetch here associated with this gale as well. Maybe, and that's better in the California swell window, but we're talking something very tiny. And again, something more like from 170, 175 degrees, really focusing on Southern California. Well, if you call that focusing, really focusing on Chile and, of course, Peru. But maybe some sideband refracted kind of, not refracted, but bending kind of energy reaching into Southern California about a week out. So that'd be next weekend sometime. But really, that's about it. Wind swell is the primary focus. And so with that, we go taking a look. Let's see what's going on long term with the Madden-Julian Oscillation and El Nino, La Nina. Get some hint of what's going on that we kind of already know, and you all know as well. What's going to happen this fall and this winter. As usual, we start the tour out trying to understand what's going on with the Madden-Julian Oscillation. Of course, the active phase of the MJO in fall and winter months helps build the jet stream in the northern hemisphere, and that in terms of course, helps fuel gale and storm development. So we're looking for signs of the active phase. Currently trades, of course, in control over the entire equatorial Pacific, but the main area we're interested in is this area here. That's New Guinea right there, and it's only on the equator, 5 north to 5 south, from about 135 east to about 170 west, right in there. And just eyeballing this, we see trades are pretty brisk in this area. Looking at the anomalies differences from normal this time of year, by the way, this is called the Kelvin wave generation area. We see trades, kind of mixed, a little bit from the east, but kind of a mixed bag, kind of basically neutral or normal. Though also, you can't really see it, but there's a fair amount of east anomalies here and here, pockets of it here. So, and that suggests not so much the active-inactive phase of the MJO, but you can just eyeball this here too and see that water temperatures are a little bit below normal as well, suggesting certainly not Kelvin wave activity, but the opposite of that, inactive phase of the MJO at a minimum. Looking at the forecast, 850 millibar zonal winds, that is whether the wind's blowing more to the east or more to the west. Blues suggest easterly anomalies. That's enhanced trades. The area we're looking at is right between these two ticks. That's the Kelvin wave generation area. Okay, and as you can see, just looking down all through July, and this has really been the case for the past couple of months, this is all easterly anomalies, not good, suggesting the active phase of the MJO has not been present at all for months, and if anything, the situation is only going to get worse. Here's today, August 20th. Here's the forecast for the next week. Here's the Kelvin wave generation area right between these two tick marks, and all we see is building easterly anomalies, clearly indicative of the inactive phase of the MJO. But when you have this long-running what seems like a never-ending inactive phase of the MJO, that's a clear indicator of La Nina. No surprise, everyone knows that that's where we are right now. Looking at the MJO models, the statistical model, not showing anything, meaning a dead neutral MJO pattern, but really it's suggesting, doesn't say it, but when you see this and it just goes on and on for weeks, which has been the case, you smell a rat somewhere in here. Now this model, so the yellow suggests the inactive phase of the MJO, but there's something else going on here because, there just has not been any active phase for a long time. Clear, so the atmosphere is biased towards the inactive phase, though the models are not overtly showing it. That is clearly a sign of La Nina. Phase diagram chart, you're looking down on, let's say, the North Pole. The MJO typically moves west to east from the Indian Ocean over the maritime continent, over the dateline through the West Pacific, under the United States, all on the equator, across the Atlantic on the equator, above Africa, back to the Indian Ocean. Round and round she goes. And if the active phase is within this circle, it is considered extremely weak. The big dot there, that is where the active phase is, basically non-existent. The forecast, the green line, shows, yeah, maybe some propagation off to the west over the maritime continent, but so weak as to be completely non-existent. That per the ECMF model. The GEFS model says basically the same thing, only gives the active phase maybe a little bit more potential of actually becoming noticeable about 7 or 8 days out, but still basically in the Indian Ocean and of no use to us in the Pacific. Upper level model, this is jet stream level model. Oranges and yellows are areas of suppressed, or areas that are suppress precipitation. Green, enhanced precipitation. What we see is suppressed precipitation. That basically means the inactive phase of the MJO through moving into Central America somewhere around the 9th of August, or I'm sorry, September. Little bit of tendency for enhanced precipitation, but really this picture looks more just like a dead neutral pattern for the next 40 days through the end of September. No clear indications of the active phase of the MJO, and if anything, a bit of a bias towards the inactive phase. And then finally, the CFS model, 850 millibar wind anomalies. That would be about 4,000 feet above the surface. Good approximation of what's going on down at the surface. Kelvin wave generation area, basically right along in here. And we're moving forward with this. You can see this. We see blues in the far west Pacific. That means easterly anomalies. In fact, we'll just overlay the MJO because there you go. This is the dotted contour is the inactive phase of the MJO, and expected to basically control the Kelvin wave generation area in the West Pacific through the 21st of September for the next month. A little bit of westerly anomalies here, but not really believable, and mainly all east of the dateline. Supposedly, the active phase of the MJO is supposed to wake up, show up around the 20th of September, and jumpstart us into fall. But this model said the exact same thing about 2 months ago. Theoretically, right now, or actually this active phase that was right here was supposed to be as strong as this one depicted here, if not stronger, and you see what we actually got, which was next to nothing. That's not even an active phase of the MJO. It's just a tendency towards maybe westerly anomalies. So we expect that this one will be equally as gutless as well. So the one bit of bright news in here, we go to the low pass filter, okay? So typically when you see the low pass filter having solid contours over the Kelvin wave generation area, which is like right in this part of the chart, then you say El Nino's in play. When you see this dotted contour, that means La Nina's in play. But notice what's happening here. Notice how the contour starts shifting off to the west, or I'm sorry, to the east as we get into November. And the supposed part of the low-pass filter that favors El Nino starts moving towards the dateline as well. Now, I don't know that we really believe any of this is true, but basically the thought is La Nina in control of the Pacific in the dateline region, certainly the Kelvin wave generation area into fall. Maybe some tendency for it to weaken as we get into winter, but we're not holding our breath. All right, so much for the MJO. Let's take a look and see what's going on in the ocean. Subsurface ocean temperatures, West Pacific here, East Pacific here. Notice warm water started building and becoming more confined in the West Pacific. So the 28-degree isotherm used to be over somewhere around 140, 145 earlier this summer. It has retreated back. That suggests that trades are blowing pretty strong on the equator and pushing warm water off to the west. The 24-degree isotherm right here was the whole way over by Ecuador earlier this summer. It's retreating also to 125, 126 west, okay? And so what this means is in the East Equatorial Pacific, warm water temperatures are getting shallower and shallower. If not anything, they're cooling a bit. Here's actual anomalies, differences from normal for this time of year. You see basically one little tiny pocket here of normal temperatures in the East Pacific. Most of your warmer water, and we're talking not really warm, 1 degree above normal, is right here. So what happened is El Nino in 2014, 2015 discharged just about all the warm water that was in the West Pacific. And what happens when you get a big buildup of warm water over here over time, over years, driven by years of easterly trades? At some point, it has to surge east, and when it does, either the trade winds die, allowing it to move east, or other forces of unknown origin cause the trades to die, and then you start getting what's called a Kelvin wave. Blobs of warm water start working their way under the ocean surface and then erupting over in the East Pacific near the Galapagos and Ecuador. That's certainly not the case right now. There's hardly any warm water. 1 degree anomaly is nothing. And whatever warm water was off here is dissipating quickly. Notice -2 degree anomalies here. Some of that for sure is gurgling up to the surface, erupting at the surface. It's almost like a cold water Kelvin wave, but it's not. And you'll see what we're talking about here in a minute. Another version of that chart we just saw, the anomalies, only makes the cool water pool look bigger. Very little warm water left. We're talking, what's that, 1 degree anomalies, and very little warm water in the West Pacific. Cool water in control at the moment. Upper ocean heat anomalies. So last year, right around this time, we had La Nina in control. A pulse of La Nina, we'll call it. It was a very weak La Nina. We almost thought we escaped from this with saying, that's all the La Nina we're going to get after 2 years of quote-unquote a super El Nino. And then sometime last in March or so, the spring, we got a little Kelvin wave pushing off to the east, warm water building up off of Ecuador. Another sort of a Kelvin wave. We're talking this yellow is, what, 1/2 degree? That's not really a Kelvin wave, you know? And then, but notice, whatever warm water was there dissipated. And notice the chart here. Cooler anomalies building between 160 west and we'll call it 125 or so. And that's right where at depth that cool pocket of, was it, -2 degree anomalies is sitting. So this suggests that, now this is the upper 300 meters of the ocean, but you'll see more of this in a second. Sea level anomalies. Basically, from the JSON-2 satellite, strip out all the waves, all the wind chop, all the tides, any other anomalies, and you see how high the actual ocean of the surface is compared to normal. This is centimeters. We're talking, 2 inches. Pretty sensitive instrument. One little spot here down to -10 centimeters. When you get a depression like this, a little bit of an indentation on the ocean surface, that means there's cool water down below. Cool water contracts. The ocean surface contracts a little bit where you have warm water. And over here, again, this is the equator. That's New Guinea there. There is the Galapagos and Ecuador there. Dateline right there. So whatever warm water we have, this suggests there isn't much warm water. Right here is 0 to 5 centimeter positive anomalies. There's your negative anomalies. All we care about is what's on the equator specifically. And so this suggests some sort of a weak La Nina pattern returning. Now, here's where things just get not real good. We'll just be blunt. Surface temperature anomalies. Differences from normal for this time of year, but at the surface, not at depth. And it's clearly obvious, these blues, you see negative numbers. That means upwelling, cold water erupting along the Peruvian coast, off of Chile, over the Galapagos, and then extending west out, in pockets at least, to 160 west. The main Nino monitoring region, Nino 3.4, is between 120 west and 170, a little bit off the chart here, 5 degrees north and south of the equator. The balance of this clearly is cooler. Also notice the area south of Mexico, we had warm water here. That's all cooling off now too. The trend, 7-day trend, not a long-term trend, but just enough. And you can see blues suggest cooling. Down here, a lot of cooling. Pockets alternating warm and cool, but the bulk of this is cool from just about the Galapagos on out to 150 west. Just, confirming what we're seeing on other charts. And here you go, backed off, looking at the big picture. You can clearly see some sort of cooling pattern developing along Peru. That is just typical La Nina. Get that upwelling pattern, normally caused by increased trades in this area. That'd be southerly winds, blowing away warm water, causing upwelling, and then that tracks. Remember, trades are blowing along here too, causing upwelling. And where was that cool pool we saw at depth? Somewhere right around in here. Look at that nice little spike of cool water there. So upwelling going on here probably will tap some of that cool subsurface water as well. The main Nino the main area for measuring or monitoring El Nino, La Nina, right in here. Draw a box here, 5 degrees north and south. Clearly a cool stream in control, suggestive of some kind of La Nina. We'll put this into perspective in a second. Next up, we view the Southern Oscillation Index, difference in pressure between Darwin, Australia, and Tahiti. Positive numbers suggest the inactive phase of the MJO. Long-running positive numbers suggest La Nina. Well, for the past month, it's been nothing but positive numbers other than one little 3-day run there. Current value, 4.61. Not that positive, but you see it was pretty positive a few days before. The 30-day running average, use that for monitoring the MJO. It's only positive 4.24. That's just above neutral. That doesn't even suggest the inactive phase of the MJO, so kind of a neutral. That pretty much correlates with what we saw in some of the other MJO forecast charts. And the 90-day running average used to compute or used to indicate signs of El Nino, La Nina, 0.71. That's basically dead neutral. So though we have cool water in play at the moment, this index does not say La Nina in play. It says dead neutral. The ESPI index, similar to the Southern Oscillation Index, but instead of measuring difference in pressure between these two areas, it measures differences in rainfall. You want to see positive, more rainfall than normal in here. That feeds the jet stream in the North Pacific in the winter months, and that helps create storms. The current value is -1, meaning less precipitation than normal in here, another sign of La Nina. And that's not unexpected given that water temperatures are cooler than normal here. You need warmer water to get some evaporation, and that helps feed storms and rain and all that. But if it's cooler than normal, then you would have less rain than normal above. 1 standard deviation below normal, drier conditions there. Sort of another indication of La Nina. Now, the interesting part was it was down to -2 a month or so ago, and it has since backed off. Now, note, the other point was that the water temperatures were not cool off in this area a month ago. They're actually kind of warm or neutral, looking pretty good, and then all of a sudden this index dropped. And typically what they say is when it drops to like a negative number, like a -2, about 3 months later, the cool water starts showing up. Well, we already have the cool water starting to show up, and that only showed up 2 or 3 weeks ago. So this index is doing a pretty good job of being a forewarning of what's happening in the ocean. The Southern Oscillation Index, the other one we looked at, is more sort of after the fact looking at what's going on. Actual sea surface temperature over the whole Nino 1.2 region, that's the area off of Peru and Ecuador and the Galapagos. You see it dropped off pretty good the early part of August, trying to make a little bit of a comeback, but still it's half a degree below normal, sort of somewhat indicative of La Nina. But the index that really matters is the Nino 3.4 region, that one we were talking about earlier, the official El Nino monitoring region. You can see sea surface temperatures down, trying to make a little rebound the past 2 days, but still down 0.418. That's not significantly down. That is a very weak La Nina, but still, La Nina just the same. Well, it's not officially La Nina, but it looks like La Nina. Sea surface temperature forecast from the CFS model suggests temperatures slightly below normal right now, but forecast to continue to dip down to about -0.7 degrees as we get into December or so, and then starting to rebound from there. But this is the heart of winter. Now, does this, this is negative temperatures, half a degree for 3 months, for three consecutive 3-month periods. That'd be about 9 months worth. Suggests La Nina. We're not seeing that. So here's last winter, by the way. Here's where we were. We were down at 0.7 degrees last October. Right now we're down at 0.4, let's say, and forecast to fall to 0.7. So this maybe doesn't fully suggest La Nina, but it suggests a normal biased cool for the winter, for this coming winter. Let's take a look at some other models real quick. Here's the mid-August plume of all models, all ENSO, El Nino Southern Oscillation models, dynamic models. They're all listed right here. The one we like to look at is the NCP CFS version 2 model, but there's also the statistical models in here. You can see the spread. Some say staying warm. Well, that's probably not going to be the case. Some say cool. There's the NCEP CFS version 2 right there, that blue line. There's the cool, that's probably the outlier on the cold side. Then the average here of the models, I'm not sure. Oh, here we go. The statistical average is up in here saying, maybe 0.2 of a degree above normal. The CPC consensus says maybe 0.2 below normal. And somewhere in here is the dynamic average. Oh, here it is down here. And it says, yeah, maybe 0.2 of a degree. So basically neutral is what this is saying. But we can drill down and you can look at the actual numbers for every model. We're not going to go through all that. Average of the dynamic models, 0.1 of a degree below normal. Average of the statistical models, 0.2 of a degree above normal. Throw all that together. Average of all models, 0.0000 until you get out to, where is this? February, March, April. Basically neutral or slightly above. And then you could probably, where it is, there's our outlier. This is the CFS version 2 showing -6, -7, -5. You scan down here. Okay, the Cola's CCSM4 is doing about the same thing. The Mateo from France, about the same, but the others are far less negative or pessimistic. So that just gives you a sense of what's going on. Odds are, just looking at the charts, looking at the negative sea surface temperatures, looking at the some of the indexes, we suspect the CFS model might have a little bit better handle on things than some of the other models. But still, if that's the worst case scenario, that's not even really La Nina for this winter. It's neutral biased towards La Nina. Still, that probably suggests less favorable jet stream conditions, therefore less favorable conditions for storm production, certainly in terms of surf. Whatever we do get, maybe we'll be more out in the dateline. Probably a drier winter for California. How much drier? Hard to say. It's more art than science, but we'll go in favor of drier conditions for this year. Okay, so we had 2 years. Let's put it in perspective, though. 2 years of Super El Nino. Then last year we had a very, very weak La Nina. This year, another very, very weak La Nina. But you're looking at the sea surface temperature data, the idea is once we get through that, odds are our La Nina will probably be over, and then we're going to fall into a neutral pattern. And then we basically start monitoring subsurface temperatures in the West Pacific to see if we start getting building warm water temperatures at depth over by New Guinea in that area. And the more that you get, then that gives you an indication how big the warm pool's building there. And the warmer it gets, then the sooner you're going to have some sort of another El Nino. We don't expect that to happen for 4 or 5 years probably. But if we can just get ourselves through this winter, yeah, it won't be great. We're going to have to suck it up a little bit. But that gets us probably for the year after that into a neutral pattern, and then from then on, things will be on the upswing. So short term, though, of course, wind swell looks to be the main focus. Maybe some very low odds of southeast swell relative to California. Hawaii, not done very well this year from the southern hemi. And for all practical purposes, it looks like the summer is quickly coming to a close. We're hoping that the North Pacific wakes up fairly soon. August 15th is historically when we look for tropical storms tracking northeast. recurving northeast, but we don't see any of that going on, and we don't expect to see any of it. So we have to wait for a typical or a classical winter-type gale to get going in the Gulf of Alaska. Probably a couple more weeks at a minimum. Anyway, that's it for this week. We'll do it again next week. Same time, same channel. Thanks for watching.